Sup, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about the new changes to Master Loot and why I think that they're a bad idea. Now, before I really get into all that, I do want to say two things. Number one is that this may or may not be kind of a longer video. I have a lot of points that I want to bring up and discuss, and some of those points I want to talk about in depth just so everybody can kind of see where I'm coming from. And the second thing is that there's probably not going to be a whole lot of memeing and joking and flipping and flopping and clowning around in this video. I'm sorry, but I think that at a certain point that can kind of take away from the message, and I want to be very, very clear with this message because I think it's very, very bad for the game, and my goal with this video is to raise awareness and also change people's minds. Obviously, if enough people don't like something, they'll probably change it. That's my goal. So anyway, before I really get into all the reasons of why I think it's a bad idea, I first want to explain what it is. So in 7.0, they introduced a new loot system and they kind of renamed and redid Master Loot. Now it's not called Master Loot anymore, it's called Guild Master Loot. And the reason for that is that unless your group, let's say a pug group, is comprised of 80% guild members or more, you literally cannot use Master Loot. So let's say your group is 50% guild members and 50% pugs. You cannot use Master Loot. It is grayed out. You cannot use it. It's completely unavailable. If you have up to 80% or more, you can use Master Loot. It functions just the same way. And instead of being able to use Master Loot whenever you're below 80%, you are defaulted over to Personal Loot. So that's basically the change. This was also in the Legion beta, and that's pretty much what it is. Now, first thing I want to do is kind of explain why I think that this was done. Now, it should be no a secret, no surprise. It should be obvious to everybody at this point that Blizzard is very, very much trying to push personal loot. They've been trying to do that ever since Mists of Pandaria, and that's why they changed LFR over to personal loot. Now they've changed all the dungeons over to personal loot. Nearly everything now is personal loot. I think that there's a very, very negative connotation that they have with deterministic or guaranteed rewards, and they want to make everything basically to where it's not a guarantee. And so whenever something drops, you already know that drop, that there's a higher chance of getting an item if you have the control of the master loot or there's some sort of a guild or something like that. And I think that they're just trying to take as many deterministic rewards out of the game, and I've been seeing that a lot in Legion, and of course we've talked about that a lot in my other videos. So they have been obviously trying to push personal loot even more and more. They're making lots of changes to it and making more things forced personal loot, and this is just another one. So I think that's one really, really big reason. Another reason is the obvious reason of ninja looting. Ninja looting has been in the game as long as the game has been a game. And, people can say that, aren't you the guy, this is your fault, you made the guide on ninja looting. For everyone that's not a fucking moron, anybody can tell that if you watch that guide and you can, and I also made that guide how to actually explicitly prevent ninja looting, but if you watch that guide and you understand it, you know what to do to prevent yourself from getting ninja looted at the same time. That was the whole sword and the shield analogy in the beginning of the video. So I don't really think that that's a problem. I don't really think ninja looting is too much of a problem. And the reason for that is that I think every individual has a certain amount of personal responsibility. And whenever they join a group that they don't necessarily trust the leader, that's a risk that they take. And they can always join groups that don't have Master Loot on them. You can no longer change groups to Master Loot in the middle of a boss fight. So the whole thing where like the boss is at 5%, then the guy switches it to Master Loot and tries to sell everything back to the raid after he steals it all, that can't even happen anymore. And so there's never going to be a point where you actually unknowingly join a group and you kill a boss and you had no way of telling that Master Loot was available. So there are plenty of groups that have personal loot, plenty of groups that have group loot, and plenty of Master Loot groups that aren't full of ninjas. So I didn't really see how the system was broken, but Blizzard decided that it was. I think another reason that they did this was because they wanted to combat the system or the practice of reserving an item. Now, reserving an item is whenever somebody makes a group and kind of in, I guess like as payment or as a reward for reserving, for creating that group, they reserve a certain item for themselves. And so I'll give you an example from back in ICC. Or actually, some people might not have played back then. Let's just go ahead and do something recently. Sakrathar, who's one of the bosses in Hellfire Citadel, drops a very, very good trinket called Soul Capacitor. Soul Capacitor is the best trinket for rogues and a lot of other agility classes. So let's say I'm a rogue and I want to put together a group and I reserve Soul Capacitor. That means that if Soul Capacitor drops in my raid and I have Master Loot, that is automatically, I automatically give that to myself because I reserved the item and everybody agreed to that beforehand because they decided to join the group, and nobody obviously, that's assuming that you didn't, like, you told them and they basically consented to that. Now, I think that there was another thing with preventing split runs. Now, split runs are basically where like guilds take like 5 members and then like 25 pugs, so they can like funnel all of the gear into those members. That this isn't going to do anything to stop that because they'll just have all those people in the guild. That has nothing to do with it. So if people think that that's why it is, that's not it. I think that Blizzard, I think that they've had like research that has told them that players who have negative social experiences are most likely to quit the game or not recommend the game to their friends. And so in trying to remove all instances of having a negative social experience, they've ended up creating situations where they will, in my mind, remove the entire ability to have that social experience to begin with. So anyway, guys, and I think that that's kind of what it is. I'm going to kind of explain why I think that this is kind of a bad idea. I have a lot of different reasons down here, and so it's going to take kind of a while. Number one is that I think it will force people to prefer inviting guildies. Now, the reason that that's kind of an issue, that's not really necessarily a reason that that's a problem, but it also forces more inclusiveness and not, I guess like it's not really inclusiveness, but people very much keep to themselves and they don't necessarily interact and go out and do things with the community. I remember back in Burning Crusade, my guild would create runs and, to do like Gruul's Lair or something like that. And, whenever you're reserving an item, you kind of have to, because you're doing that, you kind of have to lower your standards a little bit sometimes, because you might not want to get somebody who's like also like another rogue. Like, let's say we used to reserve Dragonspine Trophy, I think so, in Gruul's Lair, which is from Gruul. That was like the best agility weapon, or trinket actually. So we would reserve that item. And so if we do that and there's another tier 6 rogue and he needs it too, he's just not going to join that group. But there are other people who can join that group for the experience of doing the raid, for in this, I guess at this point in the game, achievements, or getting like maybe the Moose Mount for Heroic Archimand, or a lot of other reasons. And because we kind of had to lower our standards a little bit because we had a higher expectation and we were trying to get a little bit more out of it, a lot of people got to see that raid that I don't think would have if we were all just doing it in our guild. So it kind of not forces, but it gives the opportunity and it makes it more readily accessible for players that might not have really been able to get into those groups to find a way in there and maybe not necessarily get that specific trinket, but they've still got free reign over getting all the other items. So I think that's one big reason, is that it will kind of force guilds to be more insular. And, obviously with server communities, people will kind of expect people to join the guild if they're going to be doing any sort of a pug. Now, the next thing is it will not only decrease I confused myself. It will increase the expectations in those pug groups. And the reason for that is because now, you don't really need to worry about, okay, well, if we can just get through this, I can get my reserve item and we're done. People are going to have higher expectations because they're getting less out of it. And also because the person who's joining doesn't have to concede anything else extra. And so there's less that the group leader has to give that person, because the person has to give less to the group leader by basically relinquishing their ability to receive a certain item outside of a bonus roll, or if there's 2 of them or something else like that. So I do think that's another really big issue. Now, I also think that it will incentivize players not to bring their friends to guild runs. There are a lot of guild runs that my guild does where we get like, let's say 20 people or something like that, and we'll just pick up a few more people from trade chat, or maybe invite some people's real life friends or their brothers that might not play on the server or might not just be in the same guild. whenever we're not able to control what happens in that run, because usually the reason that mythic raiders are going back and doing a heroic instance is to help out a certain player or to achieve a certain goal very, very quickly. And so if we can't really kind of, no, I don't really want to say we, but they or anybody in this circumstance, if those people can't really kind of control that in a way that they want to, which I don't really think that having the option to do master loot is an unfair level of control, because again, everybody consents to that before they engage the boss, because you can't change master loot in combat. So it will incentivize guilds and groups of friends to not invite people outside of that group. Now, it also will hurt players who are in low population realms. Obviously, now that this is the case, if you are in a higher population realm, there is the option for people who are trying to fill up the group, say, hey, join our guild, even if it's for the night, so we can do master loot, and if you can't do that, you can't come to the run. And so players in low population servers are not able to do that because you can't join guilds cross realm. I don't think you can do it from all the different realms. So this is another thing that hurts lower population servers and lower population server players. And honestly, they really need to do something about that on its own. Now, also, it will force all of the cross-realm groups into doing things personal loot. There are a lot of consecutive groups that go every week, and maybe not everybody's from the same guild, but they're all still friends. Like, let's say they're Battletech friends and they don't all play on the same server. This removes the option from that, serious group of players, and not only serious group players, but trusting groups of players, to where they're not even able to do this even if they want to. Now, for me personally, this is kind of a problem, and I used to run back in Warlords of Draenor. I love to be able to say that, but back in Warlords of Draenor, I used to be able to run mount runs, and every week I would put together a group, and I would do Blackrock Foundry and I would do High Mall Mythic. I would do both of them on Mythic, and we would clear all the bosses on stream. I'd invite the more geared viewers that I had, and somebody would have the chance at getting the Mythic Blackhand mount. And I put that group together, and now with a system like this, there's no real reason for me to put that group together. If I have somebody in there that's really not helping the raid and not doing what they're supposed to do, I would really kind of feel bad giving them a Mythic Blackhand mount, and we never really have had that happen before. But removing the control from the raid leaders and from the entire raid, honestly, because even if all 20 people consent, all 20 people in the Mythic group consent to this, if they're not all in the same guild, they still don't even have the option to do it. So for me, if I'm just going to run a raid, and like, let's say somebody wants to get a piece of transmog gear and I just want a belt, but I put this entire raid together and now I can no longer ensure that I'm going to get that belt, there's a lower chance for me to even want to put that group together. And I think that that's really kind of what it's going to come down to. Now, again, they said that it was to combat, I guess, like abusive or, like bad ways of using Master Loot. But the truth is that, a lot of these people that put together the, these reserve runs and everything like that, instead of putting together the reserve runs now because they're not able to, they're probably not going to make any groups at all. Because if they can't actually get something out of that, I mean, guys, if you've never done it before, it actually is really hard to make a raid. It might be easy for me because I have a stream and like people watch the stream, and so I can just invite them directly from there. But it wasn't that long ago that I was sitting around in trade chat trying to fill up a group for ICC, and it would take like 3 hours and it would fall apart. So it's actually very, very frustrating and very, very hard to put together a raid. And the person that puts together that raid takes on a lot of extra responsibility and a lot of extra, just like responsibility. Honestly, I think responsibility is the main thing, and work. It's a lot of extra work and it's a lot of extra responsibility. And to take away that person's ability to determine how that loot goes, even if everybody else consents to that, is, again, I just think that is very unfair. And so if a player doesn't really have that ability to reserve that item, that kind of removes that player's reasoning or, I guess, motivation to create that group. I think that this change will result in a net negative of pug groups, which will hurt the entire community in general and not just hurt people who are abusive with the Master Looter system. Now, also, personal loot did receive one change, and or they've actually received a couple of changes. But one of the changes is that you can trade loot among other people. And so let's say like I'm in my guild. There's another warrior in my guild named Artunius, and so if Artunius or Reg, who's our rep paladin, if one of us gets like a pair of shoulders, and if it's not an upgrade for me, I can trade it. Even if I get it through personal loot, I can trade it over to Artunius or over to Reg if it's not a higher item level than what I already have. Now, one of the fundamental problems I think with that is that item level is not the end all and be all of what is a better item. Now, also, the problem is that some stats are better for rep paladins and some stats are better for warriors. And also, if you're going to be doing this, with a guild and everything, it's going to feel kind of shitty to some people. You either let people make their own decisions with that loot, or you create the circumstance where you have to tell somebody to give away an item that they feel like they deserve, or that they received an item. They're like, oh wow, this is a great upgrade for me. And then your raid leader turns around and tells you, hey, go give it to somebody else. I think that would make somebody feel really shitty. And it's just another instance of, I think, creating a bad environment. And I don't think that that in itself creates a bunch of problems. What if that person says no? What if that person doesn't want to trade it? What if that person resents having to trade it? It's just a million different things, and I really don't want to have to get into all of them. Now, honestly, guys, reserving loot has been in the game since basically since the game has come out. I remember this was happening in Burning Crusade. It was all the time in ICC, and now you see it all the time in Hellfire Citadel. A small guild, group of guild friends get together and they want to help one of their friends out, and they say, hey, we're going to reserve a couple of items for you, and we'll bring in a couple of extra people to make sure a few more items do drop, and then we'll go ahead and give those items to you, and everything else is free roll. And I think that, again, creating these systems and making that not an option anymore for those groups of people is going to end up hurting the people that were getting invited into that group. And maybe they just didn't have an option at one of those items, but now they're not going to have an option in any of those items because those groups aren't even being made. I think one analogy that we could use is like a house and a key. Now, I think the raid leader and the person who creates the group is the difference between the group being in the raid and the group being in the main city. And that raid leader and that instance leader makes and puts together that group. Now, it's kind of like a house. That raid leader is the key, okay? Now, it's not that the house isn't extremely important. Like, having the entire group of people is extremely, extremely important. But without that key to open up the house, that whole house, everything that's in it, the whole house, it means nothing, okay? And the raid leader is that key that gets everybody together and actually gets them inside the instance and makes things happen. And you need to incentivize behavior like that, because unless you want to make everything done through personal loot or something like that, or LFG or LFR, there are going to be people who are going to have to take on extra responsibility. And in order for an incentive for those people to take on extra responsibility, they're going to have to get something out of it. And the more things that you take away from them, like the ability to reserve an item or anything like that, the less people are going to feel like they're compelled to actually do that. Now, I don't really know how this is going to work with mounts. I mentioned the BRF runs before, and so now with this change, whenever we kill Mythic Blackhand, is one person in the group going to guaranteed receive the Blackhand mount or not? I have really no idea, but, to me, as I said, it just kills my Mythic stream runs, okay? And it was something that I really did enjoy to do with everybody on my stream. I really had a lot of fun doing it. I did it multiple days, and we ended up getting like 7 or 8 different Blackhand mounts for people who might not have ever gotten that if it weren't for me putting together that group. Now, I was only one person in a group of 20, but without me, that group would have not happened. That's the key analogy. I'm not any more important than the house, but the house needs the key to exist. So hopefully you guys can understand that. Now, I also don't think that this solves any sort of loot drama, and the reason for that is because people will get loot that they can't trade. People will want to auction off the gear, or we could also have a circumstance or a situation that we had whenever the Dragon Soul LFR came out, where people don't want to trade away gear right away and just give it to somebody for free, and so they'll wait until the end of the run and make a person that, even though they had this item and they don't need it at all, they're just going to vendor it. They'll try and get something else out of this other person because it gives them more bargaining power, so they can get something that helps themselves. So, I don't know, like as an extreme example, you could argue like gifting them a pet, or maybe trading them gold if they're on the same server, or anything like that. And I think that that's arguably even worse than having a reserve because it's random. And again, this also does hurt guilds that aren't doing that aren't like that aren't on the same server, and so just groups of people, because they're no longer able to determine like, okay, well, we're going to give this guy more gear, even though he might not necessarily deserve more gear than the other mage, because let's say the other mage has attendance problems, the other mage is going to quit the game, the other mage is going on a vacation, and so we want to gear up this other guy so he's able to do as much damage as possible on the new boss we're trying to progress on while the other guy is gone. And Personal Loot removes all of that deterministic option, all of those deterministic options, and just throws everything up to RNG. Now, that's basically, I guess, like in a nutshell, all of the reasons why I think that's a bad idea. There might be a couple others that I can think of before the end of the video, but I do also want to propose my tongue is like, I don't know, it's like something on my tongue, like I bit my tongue, so sorry if I'm saying some words wrong like that. So if it's not obvious already. So I do have some solutions to where this change would be more bearable and more understandable. Now, number one, obviously the best solution in my mind would be remove the restriction entirely and treat people like adults, or at least like people who have their own agency and control to make their own choices and decisions. It seems very patronizing to me to just remove an option because somebody might be mean with it. It's just kind of ridiculous. And the other options, if they do want to stick with the system, what I would really like to do or see is for players who are on, the raid leader or battle tag friends with somebody else in the group, for them to also count towards the 80% threshold. So let's say, I invite, I don't really know how the math is going to turn out here. Okay, so let's say there's a 10-man group, okay? And I invite 5 of my guildies and 3 of my real-life friends, or they're on battle tag or real ID, that will still count towards that 80% rule. But if they're not on battle tag or real ID with anybody else in the group, then it wouldn't count towards the 80% rule. And I think that would be a way to kind of circumvent this and still make it a little bit more difficult for players to, knowingly deceive each other and, make those deceptive and abusive groups like the ninja looting and, extreme reserve groups and all that kind of stuff. And, because, they can always have the master looter, and they can say that, hey, loot is going to go one way, and then when the boss dies, they take it all and then auction it off, or just vendor it, or give it to their friends, or whatever they want to do. It's not like it's impossible to ninja loot things, but a lot of the other options that you used to be able to use are now off the table. So I would like to see real ID friends or battle tag friends also count towards that 80% threshold to be able to use the master looter. And the third solution, I would say, would be to add a consent box. And so whenever somebody switches it, the raid leader switches it over to master loot, you have to make sure that everybody in the group, it's basically like a ready check, right? And you have to click ready and like, yes, I'm okay with it being done in master loot. And so that way, at that level, people really don't have anything to complain about. Now, obviously, I know that doesn't really solve all the problems, but it does kind of let people know of what the risks are before they actually go ahead and take them. So I think those 3 options are really, the solution in my mind is just get rid of it. It's ridiculous. But the other 2 solutions I think are kind of common sense solutions that would probably work and make the system better. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I got. I hope that you guys, I hope you guys agree with me. I really do, because I think it's really bad for the game. As I said, in removing all the potential for having a negative social experience, I think they've removed a lot of social experiences in general. And that's led to less commitment and less attachment to the game, which is why you have so many cyclical players and people who quit, and then they come back, and they quit, and they come back. For a normal game, that would be fine, like Diablo 3, but a subscription-based game like Warcraft, you just can't really... the business model is based on people playing the game over time, not just playing for 1 month and then quitting, obviously. So, Ian Azakostas, who made the announcement about it, said he wanted feedback. Here's my feedback. I hope you guys change it. I think it's a really bad idea, and I think it's bad for the community. Good intentions in a way, good intentions, but very, very bad implementation. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I got. I'd like to hear your suggestions, solutions. If you think I'm wrong, I'd like to engage with you in the comments. If you say I'm wrong and I'm dumb or something like that, and I'm toxic or whatever, I'm probably not going to do much. But if you actually come out with a real argument, I will probably come back with something. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I got. Thank you for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.